Hello. Starting as we need to go on. Hello and welcome to a late night talk. My guest this evening is Krystle Matar, and we're going to talk about basically whatever we feel like, unless we get some questions. So that's about the long and short of it. We've already done the weather. It's way too hot here. It's way too cold there.
Not warm enough here.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately for you, I can babble about just about anything, so I'm set.
Awesome. Cool. So for people who don't know you, tell us about you. Tell us about your writing. Tell us about your two books and your new book that came out fairly recently.
Yeah, in April, I guess. Oh,
April,
it
yeah.
passes so fast. So I wrote Legacy of the Brightwash, and then the
Mm-hmm.
sequel, Legacy of Brick and Bone, just released.
Mm-hmm.
Brightwash was a Spiffbo finalist 2 years
2 years,
two
21,
cycles, two cycles
2021
ago.
or 20, yeah.
Yeah, two
Yeah.
cycles ago. Spiffbo 7,
Okay.
and we're on 9 now. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
how I'm counting. I came in second on a very close race, but I'm very happy I lost to Jen because she's fantastic. So that was worth it. Um, I don't know what else to say. I'm really bad at this part.
Okay. What is it about? What was your first book about? Let's do that.
So Brightwash
Brightwash.
is kind of a genre blending of like all of my favorite things.
Mm.
So it's part Victorian murder mystery, it's part fantasy, and it's structured more like a season of a TV show because I'm a
Okay.
big fan of long form storytelling rather than short form. I find
Yeah.
movies, unless they're very, very tight in scope, are really dissatisfying to me because I have a million questions left over
Fair.
at the end of the movie. So I like miniseries and I like that sort of storytelling. So it kind of accidentally ended up that way with Brightwash, where um, the scope is uh, is wide starting off, and it's kind of a long and meandering book, and depending on who you ask, I'm either wildly successful at making that interesting or horrifically terrible at storytelling. Um, but um, it starts with the murder mystery and then just kind of devolves into a socio-political um, conversation, where this the hardest part is not spoiling it. um,
Yeah.
the Industrial Revolution is powered on magic instead of coal and
Okay.
gas,
Yeah.
and so it's a conversation about what that would look like and how um, oppressed people who are capable of magic would be, because
Mm.
for the sake of the economy, these people need to work. And it gets pretty grim, but it's also a little bit romantic. So I generally hope that it balances out in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the second one gets quite a bit more grim, I'm told. As I was writing the second one, people were like, "Yeah, Brightwash is pretty dark," and I'm like, "Oh, geez, if you think this is dark,
Oh
you're
boy.
gonna ride when the scope blows out." So, it's been interesting to see people follow me down my really dark rabbit hole, which is how I met Michael Fletcher.
Yes, we were just saying. So, Michael R. Fletcher, for those who don't know,
Yeah,
also writes fantasy, and he writes kind of cross-genre stuff. He,
yeah.
I haven't read it, but he's done that kind of Western book that I've heard the name of a lot.
Uh,
Oh God,
Ghosts of Tomorrow, I think.
mm,
Um,
probably that one I've
you might be
heard.
thinking of Clayton Snyder, who did Cold West.
No, I was thinking of
That one's
thinking of
also Western.
yeah, it's like a mix of different things. But yes, you're
Yeah,
working with Fletcher
yeah,
on something.
we are working on like um our version, our ode to historic or heroic fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we are both. If you don't know Fletcher, he's the kind of the big daddy of grimdark. His stuff is out there, and So planning this thing that's supposed to be lighter and more heroic and less bleak is really
Fun.
entertaining. Yeah, because we'll be bouncing off each other, and I think our interest melds really well in that, like, the things that I'm interested in I can carry,
Yeah.
um, specifically world building. He can carry the magic system, and then we bring those two things together, and we kind of want to talk about the same things
Okay.
with
That's good.
those tools. And so we'll be bouncing off each other. Like, what if it's a slave empire and slave soldiers, and then maybe the guy is there to watch it as an experiment to see if it's working, and then we're like, hmm, that might be too dark. Maybe we should take a couple of steps back. So it's kind of we're battling against the angels of our darker nature, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I think we also want to write the ode to historic fantasy because for both of us, we're rooted in the same place.
Mm.
It's just that I don't know, maybe we're really pessimistic.
Well, after the last 20 odd years or so, it's probably a little bit natural compared to where things were.
Yeah,
But you are
it,
both influenced and perhaps inspired by
yeah,
David Gemmell because you're both doing a
yes,
reread of some of his books, which is feeding into this heroic fantasy
yeah,
novel.
that's exactly right. So, um, as we were coming up with this idea, he wanted to reread Legend
Mm.
specifically, just because it's the first, and it has, all the roots of who Gemmell would become as a storyteller. I wanted to read Legend of a Deathwalker, or
Hmm.
Legend of the Deathwalker,
Yep.
because it's about dress again, but he's younger. But um, it's also about a different part of that same story, and I find it to be a really interesting study in how he grew as a writer, where Legend is really fast and very abrupt, and people fall in love within a page and make very grand declarations, and um, the world building is sparse considering it's like it's a pretty small book.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he gets there fast, and you just follow him. But then later in his career, his books got bigger and bigger
Yes.
because he let himself spend more time with ideas, and I think he also let himself spend more time with the morality that was happening within his ideas, and he
Mm.
had more questions about what it meant to be a hero, and you see that very very clearly in Legend of the Deathwalker. So it was kind of I thought it would be an interesting comparison between the two and how he grew, and then certainly books beyond that got even thicker as he was going even
Yeah.
deeper into those thoughts. So I'll probably be reading Deathwalker shortly, and just kind of continuing my thoughts on the growth of his heroic storytelling, which in turn leads to ours, because I started reading Gemmell in his later novels,
Ah,
and
right.
so yeah, I I still remember the day going into a bookstore, um, and they had Midnight Falcon and they had Storm Rider
Hmm.
on the shelf, and Storm Rider was facing out because it was brand new, and it was still in the trade paperbacks size, so it was quite
Ah.
expensive. And I wanted it. I wanted it so badly, but my grandmother was like, "Well, you've never read this author before, so why don't you get this other one that's mass market paperback, and so like less than $10, and then if you
Hmm.
like it, we'll come back." And that was it for me. Like, so I got Midnight Falcon, and he changed my relationship with fantasy in a way that's kind of hard to articulate, because it's not like it was a bad relationship before. I enjoyed the genre before. Um, but Midnight Falcon, specifically Bane the Bastard, was just so good that I felt like I had stepped through to a higher tier of storytelling.
Mm.
Um, and then I read all of his new books as they came back out, and then I had to backtrack to read his older books, and so I think
Hmm.
because of that I can see very clearly the differences between the two.
Yeah, definitely. It's
He
harder
is.
if you see the incremental thing from the start. I going back
Yeah,
now, I'd probably see that. If I start with Legend, I'm sure I'll find it. It's been a while since I've read it. I'd probably find it a bit
yeah.
rough in places and rushed. As you say, there's the insta
It,
love kind of, and then now they're in love. It's like
yeah,
he was getting on with the story. But
yeah.
what I always find interesting is that he wrote that book, and it's not a spoiler to say it's Dross, an old man. It's the end of his life. It's the final
Mhm.
battle. And then, of course, that was one of his most popular characters based on his, his stepfather, Bill. And suddenly it's like,
Yeah,
everyone's going, can we have more Dross? And he's like, well, he's
but
dead. So
dead.
no. But everyone kept asking him. And eventually he's like, but he was an old man.
Maybe I can,
Earlier,
yeah, go back.
earlier stories. There's an idea.
Yeah, yeah. And so then we see the story of him and his wife, and we
Rowena,
see,
yeah.
yeah, Legend of the Death Walker, and we see him in White Wolf in Skilganon, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that one is probably my favorite Dress novel, even though Legend of the Death Walker is special. Skilganon is almost grimdark. Like that character, he's got some darkness in him, and it's fascinating to see him um, paired with Dress, and Dress's stubborn optimism versus Skilganon's bleak life experience. So
Mm.
I feel like that book specifically probably tipped me into the grimdark circles without even knowing it, because I didn't even know the word back then.
Well, it didn't
Yeah,
exist. I know that people jokingly call Joe Abercrombie Lord Grimdark, and he's adopted it
yeah,
as his Twitter handle. But my point is always to mention the fact that there were people doing it before him. That
yeah,
writing grey characters in uncomfortable situations, trying to do the
yeah,
best, and Gemmell did that in some of his books.
yeah,
He
yeah.
had
He's kind
people
of
doing it.
paving. His era seemed to be the transition period where um, people were heroes were a little bit less correct,
Hmm.
and people were having a conversation about what it means to have that much responsibility. And I found um, I had trouble relating to some science fiction and fantasy when the heroes were too good, because it's just like, I don't know what that feels like. I don't know what it means to be that sure of myself like that.
Oh yeah,
Good for
yeah.
them, I guess. um, but then it seems like in the late 80s, the early 90s, and then into the 2000s, people were starting to have different conversations about what it meant to be
Hmm.
heroic. And that's when I really fell into the genre. Yeah.
I did I ever tell you I met him once, David Gemmell.
Oh, jealous.
So
No, you didn't
I
tell
spoke
me.
to James Barclay the other week, and James knew Dave Gemmell, and he was friends with him, and he mentored him a bit. But James was already, as he said, he'd started his career at that point. But he got to the point where David would send him stuff, and he'd say, "What do you think of this?" And James was like, "Why are you sending me? What?"
You're
But eventually they became sort of mates. But it was Wolf in Shadow, I think, that
oh,
was coming out at the time, and David Gemmell was on tour doing it, signings around the UK, and I'm like, wait, that's going to be my city, and I'm going to go. So I went after work one night, went to the
oh my god.
Waterstones, went to the signing, and so this was years and years ago, right? And
Right.
he did a reading, he did a talk to some Q&A, and at one point in the Q&A, he said, "Hands up, everyone here who wants to be a fantasy writer." And little me was like, like
Wow.
a bunch of other people, and he's like, "Oh, okay, right, good, good." But yeah, I met him, got him to sign a book, chatted to him for a
That's
little bit, um, and I mean, he was a big man. I'm quite tall,
yeah.
but he was a big dude. Like he used to be
He
a
he used to be a
bouncer,
bouncer.
and
Yeah.
yeah, but he's a
Yeah.
he's not imposing. He looked quite kind of ferocious until he smiled, because his natural
Oh,
face was kind of quite dour. But as soon as he smiled, you
right.
realized that was just kind of like part of who he was. But I came
Oh, that's
away, and
amazing.
I was absolutely, it was, they say never meet your heroes. I did, and absolutely loved it. And he was a fantastic guy, kind, generous with his time. And it was such a great experience. So that was, yeah, that
That's
was a moment.
that must have been a moment.
Yeah.
I still remember finding out that he had passed away and
Mm.
thinking that I would never get the chance. Um, and I stopped reading fantasy after that just because I found myself comparing other authors to him too much, and it wasn't fair for them. So I had to take a break from fantasy and kind of process that
Mm,
gap. Um, and then when I came back in an era where a lot of people were crediting him for their writing journey, and so it felt like a
yeah.
re-entry into kind of like coming home, picking up. It was Anthony Ryan's book,
Yes.
um, Blood Song. I picked it up and I opened it and I look at acknowledgments. I'm not sure why, but sometimes there's really special stuff in there. And in his acknowledgments, he said, um, that he started writing because of David Gemmell. And I was like, well,
Mm,
I guess I'm sold.
that's it then.
Yeah. And then so I definitely have a soft place in my heart for other Gemmell fans.
Yeah, he was a big influence on me and remains so. Definitely shaped my work, him and a bunch of others. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, he was a very, very special writer. I mean, uh, have you read his Jerusalem Man books?
Yeah. Yeah. I have them all.
I've
I
got them in
even have
the
you oh
omnibus
you
thing.
have you oh wow, that's cool. I guess I don't have any omnibuses, but I have each individual book. I even have the ones that Galans, I don't know if I'm saying that right,
Yeah,
published posthumously. Rhyming
yes,
Rings and oh, what's it
I've
called?
got both of them to
Black White,
read
yeah,
because he released
White,
them as Ross Noble back in the day.
yeah.
But Rhyming Rings was never
But
released.
then
It was
they
only Black Swan, White Knight, or something, or whatever
uh
it is, the other way
White
around.
White Knight, Black Swan, yeah.
There you go. There you
Yeah, he
go.
published it. He published it back in the day, and then I guess they republished it. They got the rights to both and republished it under his
Yeah,
name. And so that was a pretty neat moment getting those in the mail. The new David Gemmell
I've
books were
got
the
those
first.
two, and I've got the third Troy book, and I've never read it.
Oh,
I said to
oh,
me and
that
James
one's
Barkley were both saying this. We both never read it. It's kind of like break glass in emergency. Read this book. That's my
yeah,
book for like. It's like you got
yeah,
6 months to live. Right, I'm going to read the third Troy book now.
yeah. Yeah, that one, Stella wrote a forward for the beginning of that one, and even
Yes.
just thinking about the forward for it makes me
Hmm.
emotional. So but that one is how I found out that he had passed away. Because I mean, oh geez, 2006, I guess I
Mm.
was a teenager in small town Canada. I did not have a lot of news from the
From
UK.
England. Yeah.
Yeah. So I opened that book and I read it cover to cover, and then I went back and read her forward, and that he had passed away. And I just
Mm.
like I actually remember where I was when I read that. Like it's so clear in my memory. Um but I mean, you can't there's no indication that any part of it isn't his. I guess he left very very detailed notes, and I
Yeah.
now that I'm a writer, I can't help but wonder how far along in his drafting process he was, like if he had a couple of finished drafts or not, or if he was that good of a plotter that you know
That structured. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to know, but I wonder anyway.
Yeah, yeah. I was at a bookshop recently, like a big book farm where they have literally just rows and rows and rows of books, and they had some books in
Oh,
glass cases, like special ones, and I kind of peered in one, and I said to the guy, "What's that one?" And it's Echoes of the Great Song, and he took it out, and it's a
oh, that's a
signed
good
first
one.
edition hardback.
Oh wow.
And I was like, I have to buy it. I have to buy it. It's like if I went away and I came back the next day and it was gone, would I
It's
regret it?
gone. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, it's like I absolutely have to get it. It cost a bit, but I'm like, I'm never going to get
It's
another
worth it.
chance to get a first
What?
signed
Yeah.
edition by him.
How do you even find something like that except by chance? So
So
yeah,
I have it. So those are two of the things. My house not burned down. I'm going to get them. Get the
yeah.
cats and
You're
get those
going back in
books.
for that.
And
I
first trip for
respect those
cats.
priorities.
Second trip for the books. Yeah, there's certain things people are like, what would you take with you? I know what I take with me. Those are two of them.
Yeah, yeah. That's a reasonable priority if you ask me.
Yeah, yeah. But you can see, I think you can see a number of authors who have been influenced by him,
Yeah,
and a bunch of other people that it's just so many other authors have impacted me, but he's the one that probably looms largest in my mind.
yeah,
So my own style's quite tight and quite lean on purpose. because I'm all about getting on with the story.
Yeah, I did notice that in the book that I'm not supposed to say that I have.
Yeah, well, there are arcs out there, and people are reading
Yeah,
advanced reading copies of Judas Blossom. So
yeah, yeah. It's I noticed that style, and it biases me in your favor for sure. The way
excellent,
it
excellent,
feels
five
like it.
star.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So I set you a film challenge because we were talking
Yeah,
about something.
we were talking about action scenes.
Yeah, someone had
Yeah,
put what action scene lives in your
yeah,
mind rent free or something, and I said, oh,
yeah,
like the first 4 or 5 minutes of Dredd, and you're like, oh no, I've not
yeah,
seen Dredd. You have now
yeah.
corrected it.
I have now
This oversight.
ameliorated my hole in cinema history.
So,
Yeah,
given that you
I
lived in
missed a
small town
bunch of
Canada, did you know
yeah.
much about Dredd, like Judge Dredd,
No,
and
yeah, no, I missed a lot of movies that came out around that time, just because I was busy being a single parent at the time. So I've gotten a lot of gems by interactions like this one, where it's like, no, I didn't even know that existed. So yeah, I watched it, and I had no idea. I guess I had heard about it because like it seemed familiar, especially everyone's joke about Karl Urban having the most expressive chin in Hollywood. Like he did a very good job with the very small amount of his face that you could see.
and thankfully you saw the good Judge Dredd film, not the bad Judge Dredd film.
Is there another one? See, this is how little I know.
So do you know that? So Judge Dredd comes from
I,
2000 AD,
I,
which is a British comic that's been going for like 40
yeah,
years, and here's me showing my not ignorance, but I never read 2000 AD growing up. Most people are like, oh, you're in from England, you must have read that, and I was like,
oh,
I started with American comics, but anyway, but that's where it started, and then Sylvester Stallone did the first Judge Dredd
okay.
film, and
Oh wow.
it.
There's something about Stallone films, like
I
you
mean,
have
I
to
love Stallone,
appreciate
I
them.
do, but
Yeah.
he had a comedy sidekick in a Judge Dredd film, and that straight on I
Oh
was
yeah.
like, oh no. Some
No.
bits were good, some bits are bad. Of course, he took the helmet off, and then
Which kind of ruins the magic.
the franchise possibilities died at that point. So then it was many, many, many years later that we
Yeah.
got Judge Dredd with Karl Urban. That was like 92 minutes. So what
Yeah,
did you
and it's
think?
that same this is telling about me. I think I'm in my good for her era of media where we got to Lena Headey's backstory, and I'm like, yeah, that's reasonable. Good for her. And I was
Feminized
kind
him.
of
You're
rooting
like,
for her.
mm,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it seems like a perfectly good retaliation for what she went through. So I was kind of rooting for her a little bit in a very unhinged way, which is very telling, probably. But it's that same style of no extra. It's just it is what it is, and it's very honest about what it is.
Mm-hmm.
No holds barred, and it's a fun movie for 92 minutes. You say that and it seems like that's not long enough,
Yeah.
especially maybe now we're used to longer movies, but yeah,
It's
it's
brilliant. It's so lean that the stuff at the
yeah,
beginning, the voiceover sets up everything you need to know. It just kind
yeah,
of tells you what the thing is if you had no idea. I sometimes watch reaction things of things. I want to see how people respond to them. And I've watched people
right.
watch like the first Conan film for the first time. And they're like, oh, this is going to be cheesy nonsense. They watch it and they come away going,
Yeah.
that was amazing. And I'm like, I know it was. I know.
That's how I felt about Tom Hardy's Mad Max. For the record, I went into that movie having bottom of the barrel expectations, and like I was like, yeah, it's fine. I'm away from the kids. I'm happy. Whatever. I don't care if the movie's good. And I was just like, oh my god, this is excellent. What happened? So yeah, that's a great feeling.
Went into Dredd thinking, oh, let's see, and then within like 5
Yeah.
minutes, I'm like, I'm in, hot shot, and it's just, it's just brilliant. It's so good. the characterization, the stuff with Judge Anderson and training and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it
And
leaves
it's
you with questions.
self-aware. Like they know what they're trying to do, and they're honest about it without it getting overly campy. And I find that very charming in filmmaking, where sometimes a movie will take itself too seriously and it slides off into unintentionally humorous. And that really kills a thing for me. But that one, it's like, no, we know this is ridiculous, but you're just going to enjoy it, and so you do.
Yeah, it's absolutely brutal from start to finish. They pull no punches on any of the action, on any of the stuff. I mean, there's always this things like, I always have one question for people who know more about Judge Dredd than me, because I kind of say there's that moment where Judge Anderson says there's anger and there's control, and then she's kind of reading him telepathically through the window, and she goes, and there's something else underneath. She's about to say what it is, and she doesn't. And I'm like, what was it? What was she going to say? I still don't know what it was. I still don't know. But
I found the bodies falling from the balcony was like my aha moment for that movie, because whenever somebody sets up something that violent, I'm always like, how much are they going to show? That's and sometimes like they're showing too much and it loses power, and then they're showing not enough, and it you miss something, like you miss the visceral ooh. And I feel like they nailed that one with those bodies falling. I don't know how much to say. Can you spoil a movie that's 12 years old?
No, probably at this point.
Yeah. So that when the bodies fell and you could like they looked like skinless bodies, it was like, oh, okay, that's what we're doing.
The comics like that in places. It's so
it's easier in comics, I think. It's really hard in film to hit that sweet spot. And then the fact that they showed it now and then in her flashbacks, it was like, I'm with you.
They were supposed to be doing sequels and stuff didn't happen, and there was problems. And Karl Urban said, "Yep, I'll come back." And then they're going to do a TV series. And Urban said it'll be about other judges and Dredd, and he'd be in it from time to time. And he said, "I'm happy to do that too." And it still hasn't happened. So we don't know if it'll ever manifest now. But it'll be so cool. I mean, I'd be up for that.
It seems like a good universe, like especially with the kind of the popularity of pretty rough media in streaming platforms. It maybe there's probably a rights issue depending on who wanted to get this. Yeah.
Things get optioned all the time, and until it comes on the screen, I won't, until it turns up on television, I won't actually believe it's there. Right, we've had some questions in from Andrew. Yes, thank you, Andrew, for all the questions. Anyway, but you say, what's your favorite Stallone movie?
Well, I think favorite is awfully strong of a word. I actually really liked the Rambo movie that he did in, I want to say, Cambodia.
Yes.
I found that one approached the subject matter in a way that was trying to have a conversation about the cost of war, and I always appreciate that. And it was kind of a hard road for them to walk because it's a Stallone movie. Like you don't come to those movies for conversations. But I felt like that one had a pretty good balance.
Mine, I've got two really. It's the first Rocky, and Rocky Balboa, which is the Rocky film he always wanted to make after 5, which he hated it, and it never worked out, and it never did well, and it was all just like, he'd gone through the bombast phase, and then the kind of street fight thing was a terrible, and he didn't like it, and it took him like 16 years, and then he came back and did Balboa, and it's just such a powerful film. I love watching that film. And then when we talked about Creed, I was like, oh, I don't know, and I love the first Creed. So yeah, first Rocky film, because it's so innocent and it's so pure, and it's so all about the fact that everyone thinks he wins. Again, I'm spoiling a film that's almost as old as me, so I'm going to spoil it. If you haven't seen the first Rocky film, suck it up. He doesn't win. Everyone thinks he beats Apollo Creed in that first Rocky film. He doesn't. It was never about that. It was about no one's
Yeah.
ever gone the distance with Creed. That's what he did, and that's why,
Yeah.
you know, he's a bum. He's a leg breaker, and you know, Mickey says, "You're a bum." You know, he could have been someone, and it just that. Yeah. So those are my favorites. Eugene sent a question which I don't really understand. He's put, "Do you feel distracted? There's lack of sir names or last
Oh,
names
maybe
in fantasy."
surnames.
Oh,
SUR.
sorry. That makes more sense now that I read it out loud.
I actually find that surnames can distract me if I know too much about the period, because their surnames are not actually that long lived of a history. Where you go back far enough, then it was just, you know, Eddie, the guy who lives on the corner, the one with the pigs, you know, Eddie, you know. So I find too many surnames, depending on how far back we're going, actually pulls me out of the story. So
Well, it's like Jobs as names, you know, Thatcher, he has
yeah, that's
100,
why.
Cooper, Smith. It's like it's just that was their job, and that became the surname,
Yeah,
and that's why Smith is one of the most common surnames in England. It was anyway,
yeah,
because everyone thinks they're just blacksmiths, but there was silversmiths, there was
yeah,
whitesmiths, there was goldsmiths, there's
yeah,
ironsmiths, and just like you keep going down, Thatchers, Coopers, and so on. So I
yeah,
don't mind. I haven't used them often. I've used them occasionally because most people don't remember surnames of characters. They remember, you know, it's Dross, it's Aragorn,
yeah.
it's whoever else.
Does
It's
Struss
just
have a surname?
I don't think so.
I don't think he does.
So
Proving our point.
yeah, no. So I don't find it distracting unless it's built into the system where they're knights, and it's
Yeah,
like in Game of Thrones it works because it's so and so House Tyrell and so of this house, and
yeah,
you're like, yeah, I get it now. I know who they all are, and some of the names can feel a bit similar. You know, a Lannister always pays his
yeah,
debts. Like, yeah, okay, we get it, we know that works,
yeah.
but most of the time, no, it doesn't. It doesn't bother me. Um, here's a random one.
I I know that Justin Lee Anderson said that out of a group of you and him and a couple other people, he was the shortest one, and he's like 6'4". So I'm guessing it's going to be at least 6'5". But
On the nose. Well done.
maybe,
Yeah.
oh yes,
I'm the founder of the British Fantasy Tall Writers Society.
yeah,
There's myself, Justin Lee Anderson at 6'3", Dave
yeah.
Ragg, Mighty Dave Ragg at
Okay.
6'7".
Oh wow.
There's a couple of others. David Green, he's like 6'7" as well. David
Yeah.
Green. So there's a few of us that are starting to
I
creep
know
out the woodwork now.
Ryan is a Kiwi, but he belongs as an
Well,
honorary
he's
mention.
Irish, so
Like,
I'll let him in the
yeah,
club.
exactly.
He's about 6'4", so he's all right.
Yeah,
He's coming over for FantasyCon, I think, in
yeah.
September. So yeah, we'll reform the
Be
group,
amazing.
the Beatles
Yeah,
group
that'll
again.
be it. That'll be a,
Yeah.
you need one average height person in the picture just for scale.
Yes, yeah. It makes everyone look really weird. Like Steve McHugh at Bristol's like, what the going on with you guys? Because we're all up there. Love
So they
Steve.
feed you up there.
Oh god, Andrew sent like 1,000 questions.
Yeah.
This one's a really short answer for me. Was RoboCop a great remake? I think he means the modern one with, oh god, what's his name? Who was in like Altered Carbon and so on. The new one.
Oh,
You know who I mean?
Oh, I know who you mean.
Have you seen the new
What's his
RoboCop
name?
film?
I haven't.
Don't.
I'm a bad film
Don't.
watcher. Okay, good.
It's
I guess
horrific.
that answers his question.
Yeah, the answer is no. It's
No.
awful. It's appallingly bad. It's
Oh,
grisly. It's pointless. It's stupid. It's not as bad as the Total Recall remake, where they get on a lift and go through the center of the earth to work from one
that's the one
continent
with
to
Colin
another.
Farrell, isn't it?
It's so bad. It's so bad. It's full of cheesy and the things that are wrong about Total Recall. It's a masterpiece
Oh,
compared to the new Total Recall film.
Oh wow.
Yeah, basically. I don't know. So there you go. Do we have a favorite Stephen King book?
I'm not super familiar with Stephen King, so I'm gonna beg out of this
Okay.
question and pass it to you because
I've read 80% of Stephen King stuff, I think, at this point. I'm catching up on the few things I haven't read, like The Dark Tower. Favorite book ever? I read it when it was coming out in 6 parts, originally in small, like, pamphlets, and that's The Green Mile.
oh, cool.
So he
Oh,
printed...
see, that's why I forget that I'm somewhat familiar with Stephen King's works, although mostly as adaptations and
Mhm.
adaptation. And that one is breathtakingly good. It's interesting to know how it stands up against the writing.
Mhm. Oh, so you've seen the film, I take it, of The
Yeah,
Green Mile?
yeah,
It's fairly close. It's one of the best adaptations of
yeah,
a book. There are some minor changes and some things taken out because he had to.
yeah. But it's a different medium. Like
Yeah,
there's only
Darabont
so
couldn't
much.
do everything, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'd probably say, yeah, Green Mile. I mean, Shawshank is a good story, but I think the film is superior because they had a lot more space and time than they did in the Stephen King
Oh,
story, which is rare, I think, to say have it
yeah.
the other way around. But I think the film is better. There again, it's
Is it
Frank
is it
Darabont.
is it a short story? Is it like a? It
It's
must
like
be.
80, 100 pages, maybe. It's
Oh, okay.
in For All Seasons. I think I've got it somewhere around here.
Oh, it's in an anthology.
There you go. Different Seasons. It's in that one.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. I think it's like 100 pages, and you know, there's a lot in there, but there's nowhere near the like. You haven't got the Morgan Freeman, the voiceover, and
Oh,
you know, he's a walk and a talk, and I didn't like him the first time I saw him, and like the
oh
voice of
man,
God
he
talking in
makes
your
that
ears,
movie.
the
Yeah,
voice of God, you know. Yes, but it's worth reading, but the film is better, which is kind of uncommon. Oh,
that's
Andrew
fair.
also said he's seen both Judge Dredd films and remembers neither. Well,
Remember
go back and watch the Karl Urban one. You
what's
need
the
to,
good
because it's
one?
really, 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 really good. There's your homework, and everyone else's.
Yeah.
Go and watch it. Go and watch it. Oh, here's a good question from Kelly. She says, "What book
Oh,
did you say a must read?"
that entirely depends on what genre you want to read. I think um, an author worth mentioning, if you like a thriller, is Dennis Lehane. He's a thriller writer out of Boston, and he writes. If it was fantasy, it would definitely be called grimdark. It's rough, but it's so good, and he's shocking, but he's not trying to shock you. He's just kind of bringing you the world as he's seen it. Like he apparently he worked as a social worker for children whose parents had been arrested. So his job was to go in and make sure the children were taken safely out of the home and brought somewhere until care could be found for them. And he would I'm not sure if he did therapy with them or not, but like that's a job. Like
That's brutal.
that's a heavy job. And I don't think he did it for very long, but it bleeds into some of his stories in a way that is very honest and very uncomfortable, but very, very good. Um, so if you can, if you feel brave to handle the world from a pretty ugly lens, but also he's got hope. Like in spite of all of that, he tells a story that tries to be optimistic, and so they're really good books. So
Okay.
there's the are they in this frame? Yeah, there. There's the Kenzie novels, all the weird sized ones, and then there's some historical fiction that's also very good. One of them is about the police riots that happened in Boston in 1919.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, he picks big topics, but he delivers them really well.
A must read book. There's so many. There's always books that are like underrated or things that
Yeah.
I love that people have never heard of. There's things like that that I
Anytime somebody
rabbit
asks
on.
me a question like this, I forget every book I've ever read.
Yeah, ask me tomorrow, and the answer will be
Yeah.
different. You know,
Yeah.
like what have I read recently that was so weird. So I've started reading some more Lavi Tidar recently, and he's such a weird and interesting writer. He's kind of his own machine. He does his own thing, and every
Okay.
book is totally different. So I just read By Force Alone. Hang on. Yeah. So this one, By Force Alone, it's the first
Okay.
one of 4 books he's doing that are like fantastical retellings ish of different things. And this one's all about King Arthur, except it's like no King Arthur book you've ever read in your life,
Oh,
because it's
that's cool.
you read it and there's a load of stuff in that is, you know, batshit weird that he's put in for fun. But then at the back, he's like, ignoring the weird batshit stuff, this is probably the most historically accurate King Arthur book because I used these
Oh.
references, not the French stuff that they romanticized during this century and this century. And then you're like, oh God, wow, okay. It's lots tighter and brutal and smaller than 50,000 warriors on either side in a battle and more dread. And you're like, it's probably like maybe 5,000, maybe. And, so there's stuff in there that's weird and interesting, and some of it's just
That's
totally
really cool.
off his head. The next one is Robin Hood, so I've got that to read.
I bet that'll be another.
Yeah, I'll come away and be like, I never thought about that before. But he's that kind of a guy. Just totally.
I'm sold.
Yeah, I don't know what the next 2 are, but I'm very curious. Very, very curious. Okay, we've had some other questions. Eugene's asked, crossbows or bows?
I have kind of a nerdy answer because I think the relationship that armies had with crossbows is so fascinating. Like, there was a time where they were banned by the Pope. You could not use them against other Christian nations because they were too deadly and it was too easy for the average person to pick one of these things up and kill a rich person.
Kill
How
a
dare
knight.
they?
Yeah.
Exactly. And a Christian knight, like that was bad news. And so you could not use them if you were a Christian nation. You risked having your entire country excommunicated if you used those things in battle against other Christian nations. But they used them an awful lot in the Crusades for obvious reasons. And so the history nerd in me is just so fascinated by this, what's implied that it was shameful and horrible that the average person could now kill somebody. And it gives you an interesting perspective on how undeadly or such a how how low the mortality rate of knights and rich soldiers must have been for that to have been so shocking for them. But you do hear a lot about such and such knight being held for ransom. They'd go slaughter all the serfs, but they'd hold each other for ransom because that was the honorable thing to do. But these damn crossbows, they couldn't do that anymore, and I think that's really neat.
If the horse is completely armored and you're covered in plate mail and chain,
right,
and you fall off, they might knock you out, but trying to kill you with anything, sure.
And it seemed to be that it was generally regarded as actually not the point of knights fighting each other. Like, and obviously people still died in spite of all of these rules. But for them to have been so shocked by it, then it was not the point of them fighting each other. They just wanted everybody else to kill each other. And then
stand around directing people.
Right, and then they got to walk away and ransom each other and trade small fortunes for each other's lives. So it's a weird way to think about warfare at the time.
I've never used a crossbow, but I have used bows before. I used to do archery with a recurve bow, so that was fun.
Serious business.
Those are the ones without the gears and stuff. So, but the problem is because I'm so tall, I've got a long wingspan, so I had to get the bow with the biggest limbs they had before they get into specialist sizes, because my drawer is so bloody long. So that was fun. Like, the guy was like, "This is the longest we've got. After this, it's like you go to shoes and you start outgrowing them after a while. You're like, I've got a specialist." I was getting close to that, so. But it was fun. Yeah, I used to do it
the
outdoors.
downsides of being a small giant.
Well, so Jim's just asked, what is the minimum height to join the club? So, Jim, I'm going to say that it's, I think it's 6'2" for a man. And we'll say, there was an argument about this, either 5'11", I think, for a woman, people were saying. I was pushing for 6 foot, but I was like, all right then.
I think that means Quenby Olsen could join if she relocated.
She was pushing for that. And I was like, fine, you can join.
If anyone deserves it.
She was like, can I join? Yes, fine.
Yeah.
So 6'2" for men. There you go. There's your thing. I'm not going to ask that question, Andrew. That's just no. I'm not asking that one. Ask a more sensible one. There you go. Well, what's your writing process? Because it might not be daily. Because mine isn't daily.
Yeah, I'm kind of on a very brief hiatus of writing at all right now, just because I need to read. I need to take some time and just read a bit. I missed enjoying books, so I've bought some books outside my usual genre just to kind of kickstart myself, and then it's worked. So now I'm just reading a bunch. But when I do write, I find that I need to if I'm not able to get things done first thing in the morning, then I have no hope of trying again in the afternoon. It's just not there. But I find if I can do like half an hour first thing in the morning before any distractions, it hooks it into my mind enough that if I have free time later, I can go back to it and write some more. So all of that is to say that it's a very chaotic process. And it depends on very many factors. Hi, Ellie. Off you go. Because I'm recording right now. Here we go. Speaking of one of the chaos factors.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't write every day. I work part-time and write part-time. I'm really regimented. I'll sit down 9 till 5 Monday to Friday, regardless of what I'm doing. So I'm always at my desk at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
That's the only way I have to. Before, when I was working full-time, I'd just come home from work, have dinner, and then I'd stay up late writing into the night and crash out. But now,
that's exhausting.
I just can't do it. I'm able to spend some time in the day. But I start writing at 9 o'clock. And I've got a daily target when I'm writing, and I'll keep going as much as I can until it's done or I'm exhausted. Like today, last couple of months, I've just been struggling with various things and writing. And today, I cleared the cobwebs out and I blasted through 2K. So that was a really good day for me. 1K is my target. Good
feeling too, like when, like especially if it's been a bit of a slog, like it's just like you almost convince yourself that somehow you've lost this ability that you've been working on for so long, but and then when you break through again, that's a good feeling.
It's because I plan, and I was kind of I hit some bumps in the planning, and it wasn't working, and I left it and came back and fiddled around with some things, and I jumped a couple of chapters on purpose, which I never normally do, to kind of see, is it still working? And it just clicked, everything worked, and I'm like, okay, I'm back in the zone now. So we got a good question from Tilly. Have either of us read Fourth Ring and Thoughts?
I have not, but
I have not.
I hear there is a very divisive conversation going on about that book.
Oh, really? I don't know. I know it's got dragons in with the name.
I don't know exactly what's going on, but people either love it and it's got a lot of hype from those people, but then there are people coming in who are deeply disappointed by it. So I think Tilly is someone who was deeply disappointed by it.
Oh dear!
Sorry to out you, Tilly.
Oh dear! We're outing you, Tilly.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I think she's been honest about not enjoying it, though. So hopefully.
Oh, okay, all right. Wow. I've heard some people have really liked it, and
yeah, it's just one of those books. I think
it's only been out very recently, though.
I know. I feel like I only just learned its name, and now there's there's a conversation happening about it, and I have no clue.
What did you miss? All sorts. We're nearly
all the
done.
Good stuff, Connor.
So,
Way to go.
Stuff. Well done, dude. You're late. Bye. Okay. And that's it now. We'll go into a bit with that. Okay. This one's fun.
I don't. I plead the fifth. I plead the fifth. People are going to take my card away, my science fiction and fantasy card away. I never clicked with those movies. My dad made me watch the first one.
That's never good. If you have to make you watch it, it's like that's never good.
And it's because I liked Indiana Jones as a kid. He was like, well, then you have to like Star Wars. And the minute that man told me that I had to do anything, that was the end of it for me. And so, you know, I credit them for being as influential in the genre as they are. Like I can see, you know, that it's a magic moment for our genre. And there's certainly some nostalgia around those first movies that even I can tap into. Like, even though my dad made me watch them, I did enjoy Harrison Ford. Like, he's great. But after that, I just kind of had no interest in following up. Although I hear really good things about Andor as far as storytelling goes, so I might jump in there.
It's the best Star Wars since Empire Strikes Back for me. I mean, it's so good. It's so much about people. They take their time. It has nothing to do with lightsabers or Jedi or any of that.
That is the best way to sell a thing to me, because as a storyteller, I'm the most interested in characters. Like, any of the interesting things around them happening are almost incidental, so long as I'm invested in the characters. And I think that's where the episode, I guess it's 1, 2, and 3, really missed for me. The older ones had that a little bit more, where it was allowed to be funnier in a way that was less campy.
I mean, like, go back to I can't even remember which one it is. It's probably Star Wars when or it could be Empire, where some of the dialogue, you know, some of it was hokey and some of it feels forced and some of it's strange. But then you get like Harrison Ford essentially on the telephone going, boring conversation anyway. And I'm just like, you don't get that. Like, it feels ad-libbed. It feels, you know, so real. It feels so genuine. It just feels like him just talking. You know?
Yeah, it's like the difference of a character actor versus I don't even know. So yeah.
Like, one of my favorite things that I did is when I talked about, I do an action movie podcast. I've done it for years and we've run a bit of a break, but I watched the last or the latest Die Hard film, whatever it was, with his son and his daughter, right? And it's awful. It's absolutely terrible. No. It's appalling and really, really bad. However, the best 37 seconds or whatever it is in the entire film is as the credits are rolling at the end of the film, he's walking across this tarmac with the two actors playing his son and his daughter, right? And I don't know if they just said, walk and, you know, we'll film you and just chat. It's almost like they didn't know the cameras were there and there were just three people having a conversation. You can't hear what they're saying, but they're talking and joking. But it's like Bruce Willis being Bruce Willis, not being John McClane. He's just kind of chatting. He says something, the other one smiles, the other one laughs. And it's the most genuine 37 seconds of the film that I've seen.
That's a shame.
But that's kind of the difference for me from the old Star Wars and the new ones. The new ones are just like, whiz, bang, look at the CGI. And then the old ones were like, some bits aren't great and haven't dated well, but they had heart and they had good characters. The new ones are just, the one that makes me most angry, Andrew, is the last one, episode 9 was absolute toilet. I just, short of me swearing for 50 minutes straight, I'm just going to say it's terrible. So, yeah, there you go.
I'm seeing that I owe Tilly an apology. And
Tilly says she's a lover of the Fourth Wing. Sorry, we get that.
I've incorrectly outed her.
You said she was a hater. No, she loves it. All right, okay, we'll clear that up. She loves it.
Sorry, Tilly.
It's all right, Tilly. You're okay. You're off the hook. You're off the hook. Don't worry. But yes. Oh man. So what are some of your favorite films? Just I'm asking now.
Ooh, that's
It's a
I
big question.
don't remember any of the films that I have watched recently. I am a sucker for really quirky character pieces.
I've got the
Like
perfect one for you, but carry on.
there's Kate Blanchett did a movie called Blue Jasmine, and it's just kind of the unwinding of her character's life, and it's brilliant. Um, or is it a different Kate Blanchett movie? She did a couple. Like there seemed like there was a couple right in a row where she just did these really really vulnerable character pieces that were brilliant. I'm trying to think. Mad Max. Mad Max is the Tom Hardy's Mad Max, and
See the
that
second
one.
one, with Mel Gibson, The Road.
No. The newest one where Mad Max
Fury
Fury
Road.
Road. Yeah, that one. That one surprised me. Like I was going in expecting it to be garbage, but like campy, nostalgic garbage. But it was really good. I'm trying to think what else. I can't even think of anything. Like I said, I tend to gravitate more toward especially British miniseries or
Yeah.
where there's just like one season and they have a very specific story to tell and then they're out. Like I really liked a lot of the cop shows coming on from BritBox. Oh God, help me remember some. Hinterland was amazing. And deeply upsetting in my favorite kinds of ways. Shetland was really good. Broadchurch is another one that's really good. So I'm if it's got good character work, and I don't need the characters to be likable. I just need them to be deeply fascinating, and then I'm there.
Okay.
Oh, Girl on a Train is an example of that, where that book gets blasted because the character is deeply unlikable, because she's really struggling with alcoholism, to a degree that it's really uncomfortable to watch her. But she's not there to be likable. She's there as a vehicle for a story that is deeply uncomfortable, and it's excellent.
There you go. Got a nice comment saying
Hinterland, Connor, not Shetland.
There you go. Getting close. Kevin says Fury Road was so good, and Andrew said Thunderdome was clearly the best. Andrew's wrong. The best Mad Max film is actually Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, with Mel Gibson from 1981. Because the voiceover at the end of that lives in my mind rent-free for the last 40 years. I'm not going to spoil. But here you go. I don't know if you've seen this. You talk about character films that you like. Have you seen In Bruges?
Yes. See, that movie is so good. And it's impossible to describe it because it's so good and so strange, and again a little bit uncomfortable, but so funny.
I still think it's the best one that McDonough has done.
I'm really annoyed with American filmmakers. They keep trying to cast poor Colin Farrell as a heartthrob when clearly his strength and his gift is as a character who is kind of an idiot but likable anyway, and deeply funny. Like, did you see the one they just did, the
Banshees of Inisherin?
Yeah, like I didn't know anything about that movie except that it was done by the same team that did In Bruges. And I consider that movie a comedy, which probably, again, says a lot about me.
It is. It's very, very dark comedy, yeah.
It's a very dark comedy.
Very dark.
That is 100% of my intersecting.
Because so McDonough did In Bruges first, then he did Seven Psychopaths, which was good, but not as good. Then he did I think 3 Billboards, and I
didn't know that Seven Psychopaths was also the Guy by
Yeah,
that did
same
In Bruges,
director, I
because they're
believe.
not the same. Like they're not in the
No,
same tone.
no.
But Seven Psychopaths is really good. I liked Stephen Walken in that one. That moment of him standing outside the car going, "No, I don't want to." That's the moment that lives in my head.
But In Bruges is still my favorite. I've watched it
Yeah,
so many times, and it's so good
yeah,
and so dark and so touching at moments, and just
yeah,
brutal
and
there again. It's
very
honesty.
vulnerable, and yeah, yeah, it's a good movie.
Oh, yeah. So, but yeah, what other good films? Yeah,
That's a tricky question.
all the films go out your brain the minute you
Yeah,
try and think about what you've watched. But some things I would watch and put on and just watch again and again and again.
yeah.
Like the last film I saw at the cinema, I think was Dune Part 1, and that was
Oh,
last year. So last
what's
year
the
or the
last
year
thing I
before.
saw? I'm not sure if we've seen anything since. Don't know. I don't even remember the last film I saw.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, life got weird.
Yeah, with lockdown and everything, last few years has changed a lot of things. I think I watched a lot more films at home than in the cinema
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
You know, going out was strange with being around other people.
yeah,
Again, this became the norm, being online, talking to people, having conventions online.
yeah.
Even it's all just kind of, how things were. So you're taking a break from writing at the moment and having
Briefly, yeah.
then you're going to go
Need like
back
a week
on.
or two.
Oh, right,
Yeah,
okay. And then you're back to writing with Fletcher on your fantasy project.
yeah, yeah. So we're gonna. I still have a little bit of world building to do that I owe him,
Ah,
but as far as I can tell, he's writing something else. He's writing his middle grade project, so I'm confident that he's busy enough that he's not
he's
waiting
not bored.
for me. Yeah.
He's not.
Um, and then yeah, we're almost ready to start plotting it, um, and then we'll start writing it. And I've been given a very strict budget of how many words I'm allowed to use. So it should pass quickly, or it will be horrifically slow because I'll be sobbing over every 1,000 words that I have to cut out. Um, I'm I have a tendency to not write short and to the point. um, but he is the opposite. So
Good
I'm gonna
balance
get
then.
myself
Okay.
I think it will be. Um I think it's important as a creative to do these projects that push us out of our natural inclinations.
Mm,
Um Especially when you have the opportunity to do it with somebody who's um respects you for who you are, but also is strong in who he is. And Fletcher's pretty established in the scene and in the genre, and so working with him, and knowing that he wants to work with me is a really cool opportunity that does push me outside of my comfort zone, but in a way that I'm really excited about. I think
mm.
the most growth that we're capable of happens in these situations that um, kind of shake our foundations just a little bit. I've always been a fan of critique partners who push me really hard instead of just saying, "Yeah, it's good."
Mm.
It's like it's good, but it could be better. And so working with him is going to be a lot of that, and I'm really looking forward to it.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. My new series has definitely pushed me way beyond anything I've
Yeah,
done
yeah,
before.
because it's historical fiction now instead of fantasy, which even though it's still swords, it's a big shift. Just because there's something different tonally that's kind of hard to explain to somebody who doesn't read both, but it is different.
So Andrew just sent the question saying, "Am I still writing the Nightingale Falcon?" Done. So today I'm working on book 3 at the moment, and this is what happened. I started writing about a journey, and then I went, "Oh, what would they be doing in 1263? How would they get from point
Oh
A to
no.
B? I don't know." So then I spent an hour and a half researching it so that I could write 2 sentences that are
Yeah.
reasonably accurate, and I'll still get a historian going, "Yeah, but it's not quite right." I'm like, well, yeah, it's fiction and it's historical fantasy. So get off my back, you know. That's. But then I carried on and was able to write a bit more. But yeah, so I'm writing book 3 of that. But this has been the most challenging and difficult series I've ever done. It's balancing so many things. Next time I'm doing something different again, which I've already got planned. But I think I'm going to try and do some standalones is the plan. But then I can shift from thing to thing. That'll be
Yeah.
different muscles and different styles and different approaches and play around with things a bit more. So that's the plan. But yes, having a critique partner that pushes you is good.
Yeah.
I've co-written one book. I did a sci-fi book with a friend, and there again we challenged each other and pushed each other and asked each other awkward or uncomfortable questions to make you be
Yeah.
like, should this be why or why not? Why have you done it like that? And you're like,
Yeah.
because I want
I
to
think,
is not a valid answer.
yeah, I was about to say, I think getting in the habit of asking ourselves that ahead of time is a really good tool to have as a writer, because if we know that we can justify um, choices that we make with a well-reasoned foundation instead of just because it would be cool, it gives us the tools to interrogate our own ideas so that we don't need people to come in as early. And then when we're building a thing, we can build it more deliberately than just certainly, I mean, I'm totally guilty of this, starting out just throwing things in because it could be cool and then it doesn't work. And then I picked up the habit of the because it could be cool, and I really like that scene, so I'm gonna go back and change everything leading up to it to make it that that scene is indispensable. And it taught me a lot about momentum and purpose for these ideas, and so it's good to interrogate ourselves on why we've chosen those things, and if we really want to keep them, you got to work for it sometimes.
Yeah, I have a habit of either I putting it in because it's cool, or sometimes
Yeah.
I know the reason, but I haven't communicated it clearly enough. My editor's like, "Why is this?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, it's obvious." "Oh, it's not obvious because I haven't actually told you why it's there." So then I have to put it on the page. So sometimes it's that there's more that's in my head than actually on the book. So
Yeah, that's challenging, kind of remembering how little other people know. When you spend so much time with these ideas, it's like it's obvious what you're talking about.
yeah, it's like it's there, and you
Yeah,
read through the book. It's oh no, it's not there. It's
I can
somewhere I
see.
cut
Yeah.
it out, or I imagined it, and I thought about it, and never actually told you. But
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah. But so after that, are you going to go back and write? Is there going to be a book
Yeah,
3?
so the series, there's going to be 3. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to do 2 trilogies that go back to back, or if I'm
Hmm.
just going to bite the bullet and make it a really long 6. Um but I find myself more and more interested by standalones, like you said, in
Mm,
within the same world, but like less directly impacting the main series.
yes.
So the main series is building up to a war. Um, and in the genre, we do love ourselves a war, but I also find myself kind of as a war history nerd, really, really fascinated by the impact that war has on civilians.
Hmm.
And so, kind of my big plan, should I have enough time to write, is put out these, the big war books, but thread these standalones through the series of um, the stories of what people are going through because of this decision to do this in this country. And certainly, the argument can be made that they had no other choice but to fight for themselves, but that still hurts people, even if it's a good thing to fight for. And I just so I'd like to spend a little bit of time between each big book with something smaller and
Mm.
more contained, where they know what's going on, sort of, but they have you know, a different plot that is happening because of or concurrently to this conflict.
I find with trilogy series and trilogies in particular, this is my third trilogy, that by the time I'm working on the third book, on some level, I'm tired because I've
Yeah.
been working on it, writing it for 3 years and probably planning it and thinking about it for 2 years before that. And 5
Yeah.
years on the same story is quite exhausting. And if it's research heavy, like my current one, it's kind of draining. So doing something within the same world, you know, you don't have to do the research, but equally if people don't buy into the first thing. And so I'm going to pivot and try a few different ideas. One of these
Yeah.
things where they're standalone with series potential, so that if
Yeah.
the idea catches fire, I do
Really.
another one. If it doesn't, it works perfectly well by itself. So I'm gonna try that. I'll talk to my agent, talk to my editor about that, and see what they think of my ideas. I've got some pictures written up already.
Ooh,
I've got some early
that's
chapters planned and written as well. So
Are you
technically,
you sound like you're a plotter, like you have a pretty detailed plan.
most of the time, yeah. I
Yeah.
beginning, middle, end, and milestones, and the
Yeah.
cool stuff comes in where sometimes I don't know how I get from A to B, and I throw something in and think, oh, that'll work. That's
Yeah.
cool. And sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes it does, and it leads to cool
Yeah.
things. But
Yeah.
yeah, I plan mine pretty, not like every single thing, because otherwise it's boring for me to write. If I know everything,
Yeah.
I'm just like joining the dots, and that's just too dull. But
Yeah.
are you more of a pantser then, or?
Um it's hard to it's hard to say exactly just because it feels like in some ways we're all kind of on a spectrum of
Definitely, yeah.
you know, whether the first draft counts as a first draft or an outline seems to depend on how much detail you put into it.
Mm.
Um, but my official answer is that I'm a reviser,
Right.
where my my first drafts are abysmal, and then I decide what parts of the story are interesting, and in that way, it feels a little bit like I've plotted something, and then I go back and make it good. But certainly for Brightwash, I wrote. Um, at the time, I was calling it a draft, but looking back at it now, it looks like an outline for a series.
Okay.
So it's 3 books. So it'll that draft will end with the third book that I'm now plotting with all the sticky notes on my wall. Um, so I don't really know yet because I feel like um, the last book that I wrote was such a bad experience that I never want to go through that again. So I'm gonna try plotting to see if it makes it a little bit less wasteful with my time, because I kind of flew by the seat of my pants and made a lot of wrong decisions for that story.
Mm.
Um, which is, you know, I think it had to be that way because I had to decide what I wanted to be as a writer.
Yeah.
Um, but it means that I wrote, you know, I worked on that book for almost 3 years. Um, and I hated it. Very close to the end, I hated it, and I considered giving up. And then suddenly, all the pieces started to come together, and I broke through. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's fine now. But I don't want to do that again. I want to learn to write with Connor's too nice. I want to learn to
believe in
write
you.
with yeah, with intention. Um, so this system of plotting loosely is very seductive to me.
I think it helps. It does. I've said this another podcast and interviews before. Like people saying, "Why do you plot? Why do you plan?" And when I was working full time, if you have to take a break from writing for whatever reason, you know,
Mhm.
family, work, crises, and you've gone away for a
And you
week,
don't
2 weeks, a month, six
yeah,
months, and you come back and you have no idea where you were going or what you were doing, to get your head back into that space to carry on is a nightmare. And it can take
yeah,
you months to be like, what was I doing? How does it work? And even the
yeah,
pieces you haven't written down that you had swirling around, they're gone. So trying to recreate
yeah,
them from at the embers is impossible. And it,
yeah,
but if you've got at least a roadmap, you're like, oh yeah, that's that, and that's that, and this is that,
yeah,
and then okay, this I've tried writing completely by seat of my pants, and that was a book I didn't even try and send off. I finished
Oh
it,
yeah.
tried revising it, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
I couldn't. I was just like, no, and I just dumped it and went on to the next one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, honestly, like if Brick and Bone hadn't been a direct sequel to a book with a cliffhanger, I probably might have given up, but I really did not leave myself that choice. So I had to make myself figure it out. But certainly, actually, Fletcher read an early version, and I say early version, but even that version I had put a couple of revisions into, but I was so unfocused with it. It was just a lot of words, and some of the words were okay, but the bigger picture was not good. And just talking to him about, like, he would give suggestions of, like, if this was my story, this is what I would do. And so I was able to take that and go, well, I don't want to do that, but that's getting a lot closer to me than what this book is already. And so I remember when he finished reading, I sat down and wrote like a bullet point of what I wanted the book to achieve. Like, what do I want it to say? What's the end goal? Like, where am I going to set myself up for the series? And how do I want this book to reflect on me as a writer in my career? And with that list, I threw out possibly 80% of what Fletcher read.
Wow.
And rewrote. And then that finished product was pretty well what's published. Like, there was another few revision passes after that, but just talking to him about what I wanted the book to be gave me a roadmap in a way that I was able to fly through. I was very stressed and frazzled, but I flew through the next draft, and it changed the book, the tone of the book completely. But I'm very pleased with where it ended up, which is part of why I'm so excited about working with him. We're very close in our visions of what we want a story to be, but the things that we're different on, I think, rather than being tension, it'll be like his strength will make up for my weaknesses, and I hope vice versa.
I'm sure it will. I've been doing some university lectures where I talk to creative writing students, and I've got another one coming up soon. And I ask them, I give them a bunch of questions, and I ask them a bunch of stuff. And one of the questions I talk about is what kind of writer they want to be. And I think part of the rush of trying to get published and the chase of getting an agent, if you're going traditional, or getting a book out, you never stop to consider what kind of a writer you want to be, what kind of a story you want to be. And I've said this to them in every lecture. And I think if one out of the class gets it, it's worth it. But I've said to them, like, if you want to write popcorn books that someone's racing through an airport and they pick it up and they get by a pool and they read it and they have a good time and it's fun and they love it, great. If that's kind of writer you want to be, and those kind of stories you want to tell, then that's perfectly valid. There's nothing wrong with that. Not every book has to be challenging and heartbreaking and trying to tear down the system, a thought piece. It's, going to change the world. It can be just fun and entertaining. But equally, if you want to say more with your work, then
what do you want that legacy to be?
Like people say, why science fiction and fantasy? And my answer is, the best science fiction and fantasy for me is where it's holding up a mirror to something in the real world, and you're looking at this lens slightly askew, and you're talking about things in a way that people may not pick up on, they may not understand, they may not get. And if they do, great. If they don't, that's fine. Like the Coward, which is over that shoulder.
It's just by the StreamYard logo in mine, but it's
so I'm going to give us a tiny spoiler in there because it's not a major thing. Like there's stuff in there to do with fame and celebrity worship and how we put people on pedestals. And there's even a thing in there from like X Factor in that book, like those kind of shows in the book that people are like, some of just have not spotted it. I'm like, it's there because I'm talking about how it's part of our society and what that means, and how do we change fame, and what does it mean to be famous, what does it mean to be a hero, what does it mean to be celebrated? That's part of what the book is all about. Everyone's like, oh, it's a quest book. I'm like, you read the back of the book, well done, That's the story. That's not what it's about.
Yeah.
So yeah, a very smart friend of mine said there's in every story, in every book, there's the story, and then it's what it's about, and not everybody will get what the book is about.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you. And that's the second very interesting thing I hear about The Coward in a very short period of time. So I'm glad I bought it when I did.
Oh, thanks.
Because I I was talking I guess it was just a general question that I put out about how sometimes traveling in fantasy gets a bad rap where people get really frustrated by it. And I was wondering why. And generally the answer is the same as why people get frustrated in any part of storytelling, is that if it feels extraneous to the story, it can really drag, which seems so obvious. I should have known that that was the answer, but your book came up as an example of someone who's done it really well.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank them.
Oh, thank you. Thank them.
I just have to remember who said it.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the trope. I'm familiar with the travel and the quest, and I wanted to do something different and talk about a bunch of other things and PTSD and all these other things in the story. And that's what it's all about. The fact that it's a fantasy novel is kind of irrelevant in some ways.
Yeah.
It's just the window dressing.
Fantasy novels. Yeah.
It's the frame.
Those truly are the best, in my opinion, because I feel like the ones that are incidentally fantasy are the ones that are focused on the people, and those, as I've already said, are my very favorite kinds of stories.
Yeah, this is it. Right, we've gone way longer than I thought we were going to do.
I told you I can talk about anything.
That's fine, but we're keeping you for ages. So, well, we'll have to do this again sometime. I had a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
So, thanks to everybody for tuning in and watching us talk about stuff and things. And go and read Krystle's books. And
yes,
please go check them out.
I should have had copies closer.
Yes.
And check out The Coward too. I hear great things about it.
That's nice. All right. Good night, everyone. We're gonna end it then, and we'll see you in the future.
Yeah.
Bye.